name is Lou Ann Bird of the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County, your moderator for this evening's forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We do want to take a minute to remind you that the laws for voting have changed. If you are already registered and been voting for years, you will now have to sign a poll sheet and show a photo ID that is acceptable by the law. So, for example, a valid Wisconsin driver's license works, but a veteran's card, a VA card, would not. You'd have to have a military military issued card. So just to give you some examples, we have more information on the table outside there if you're not sure about voting and registering. And we want to make sure that your vote counts. And I can tell you all care because you're here tonight. You can join the league and men can join too. There are forms outside the door for you. So, the Bayview Compass and the Bayview Neighborhood Association, thank you, and so does the League, for attending tonight. Thank you to our candidates for participating. They also wish to extend a big thank you to Cindy Fleckner, a staffer here at Humboldt Park, and I know Ken Vogt is here, one of our teachers, who were instrumental in setting this up. And thank you to the principal, Georgia Becker, who lent us this auditorium. And Heather and Jan Ryan are here. They'll be taping the event later, and she'll upload it to YouTube, so thanks to the both of them. Also thank you to Barb Chudnow and all the other volunteers that it takes to put on an event tonight and are here working. So, our first forum tonight presents candidates seeking election to the Milwaukee Common Council, District 14. The second features candidates for the Milwaukee County Board, District 4. And at the end, we have questions and answers for County Board District Supervisor, District 14 Supervisor Jason Haas, who is unopposed. But you can ask him questions, and he's going to be here for that. In the first two forums, candidates will first debate 4 topics, and then answer questions submitted by Compass readers and members of this audience. So if you have a card there, make sure that you fill that out, and they will be coming around to collect those cards, if you've not already done it. Our timekeeper is Dorothy. She's right here in the front. She will give the candidates cues, and we thank you in advance for keeping your answers short so that we can cover as many issues as possible. Okay? So, starting us off on the ballot for the Milwaukee Common Council District 14, we have incumbent Alderman Tony Zielinski and Jan Pierce. We will begin with 4 debate topics on issues. 1 question was submitted by each candidate. The other 2 were composed by the Bayview Compass. The 4 topics will be followed by questions, as I said before, from the audience, so make sure you fill out your card. For this debate segment, each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer the questions, and 2 minutes will be allowed for a rebuttal. And again, our timekeeper will let you know when you have 30 seconds and must stop. So the first question will be from Jan Pierce. It's a question for Tony Zielinski. At a December 2010 Common Council meeting, Alderman Bob Donovan voted against your motion to delay the renewal of a tavern license. Donovan said that in his 10 years on the council, he didn't recall voting against the district alderman's recommendation on a tavern license, but that he felt something wasn't quite right with your conduct. How do you explain Alderman Donovan's unprecedented vote against you and his stated belief that your conduct on the license committee is negatively affecting the authority of the Common Council?
Well, first off, it's not very uncommon for aldermen to disagree with other aldermen with respect to motions made to licensing items. That particular licensing item did not have the support of the immediate neighborhood. All my decisions are based on input of residents that are directly impacted. And my motion was based on input and feedback of constituents that are directly impacted. And I tell all the liquor license establishments or any major establishment that's going to move forward, you have to get the support of the neighborhood. Any kind of major initiative or project, I always endeavor to make sure that the residents are informed, they have an opportunity for input, and at the end of the day, they have the final say in the matter. And I was following the wishes of those constituents. And if I recall, the overwhelming majority of my members on the Common Council agreed with my motion, in spite of Alderman Donovan's disagreement with me on that matter. And by the way, there's a number of aldermen that disagree with him and other aldermen on other items. This is a democracy. I fully respect everybody's right to disagree with somebody else.
Thank you. Jan, you'll have 2 minutes.
I would suggest this is a common action for 10 years against the sitting alderman on Joyce Day. I think this was Donovan simply saying to his colleagues, he's tight the elections getting submitted into court. You'll remember this vote by one, carried by one vote, and your colleagues on the liquor licensing committee then voted with Bob. This was the equivalent of a high school bully going up to the not-so-popular kid in the school lunch line, dragging him out, beating his knot out in front of all kids, and setting an example showing who's boss in the neighborhood. 6 to 8 months of police calls to this bar on a daily basis, sometimes multiple calls in one day. Not one citation was written. That was an extraordinary use of police manpower. You know, I think that if that's what qualifies for leadership and working with the neighbors in the area, we could do better.
Okay. Next question for Tony. Tony's question for Jan. And using Blackbird Bar as an example, do you support the Blackbird Bar's request and other licensing requests for outdoor seating, even though the majority of residents within a few hundred feet are opposed? 3 minutes.
I think this is a pretty straightforward question. I've always believed that the important thing, whether it's liquor licensing, patio licensing, is to respect the process. One of the reasons that I got into this race is I think that Alderman Zielinski has made a mockery of the legal process. I think he's used the appearance of neighborhood consensus to build actions against specific bars. I absolutely believe that the right thing to do before any action is to get the consensus of the neighborhood, and it's important to make sure that you get an accurate pulse of the community. You don't prejudge a patio, a liquor license. You don't rule in favor of one business owner, or one resident, or one family. You get a thorough understanding of how the community feels, and then you take as in committee meeting, you listen to it objectively, and you make a decision.
Okay, Tony, rebuttal, 2 minutes.
Oh, I didn't hear an answer on that, but the previous owner of that establishment wanted outdoor seating, and I told him that I would canvass the neighborhood. If the neighborhood was in support of outdoor seating, I would support him. I canvassed the neighborhood was not in support of outdoor seating. So I went back to him, and I said, if you'd like, I could have a neighborhood meeting, you'd have an opportunity to make a presentation, and if you're able to convince the neighborhood, you can convince me. I really don't have one particular preference. I want to afford the people in that neighborhood an opportunity to have input on something that directly impacts them. He said, no, Tony, I don't want to push the issue. I don't want to cause any trouble. New people bought the bar. There was no objection from the neighborhood for the new people going in, although there were some objections, but not enough to warrant any efforts to try and stop that measure. But as soon as the new people went in that bar, I started getting calls from the neighbors. Hey, Tony, why are you supporting an outdoor seating? You know that we didn't want one. I said, I didn't say anything. I can't help what people are saying. We'll have a meeting. Anyway, at the end of the day, the only thing I have to say is all you have to do is look at the licensing meeting, and you'll see that the overwhelming majority of people that came to testify before the licensing committee were opposed to the outdoor seating. Overwhelming majority. All these records are on tape. You can go and you can listen to it. I followed the input of the residents. Whether there's outdoor seating or not outdoor seating, I don't care. My policy is to make sure that the residents are informed. Once they make their decision, I follow through on that decision, and that's what I did in this particular matter. But some people feel that they should be able to get whatever they want, irrespective of what the neighborhood wants. And I have to stand up for the principles of my constituents and the policies that we set in place that all other aldermen follow.
Next question.
Excuse me.
And you
Would you please tell Mr. to move that microphone closer to him? I can't hear him.
Thank you. Give it a test.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Is that better in the back? Can you hear in the back? We're good now. Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question you will each get to answer and each get to rebuttal. The question is, and we'll start with Pierce, with Jan. Pedestrian safety on Kinnickinnick is a significant problem in the heart of Bayview's business district. Even the pentagonal traffic signs routinely fail to slow traffic or cause drivers to yield to people attempting to cross within marked walkways. Michael Logren of Milwaukee's DPW stated KK is too narrow for angled parking, especially with bike lanes, and that it's probable that the state won't allow it because KK is a state highway. What realistic solutions do you offer to make KK safe for pedestrians?
You know, I claim to be a lot of things, but I'm not a traffic engineer. One of the things that I have noticed is KK is, it travels too fast. I thought that angled parking was one idea to sort of obstruct the pathway a little bit to slow down traffic. I've been looking into different traffic calming measures, and I think there are a variety of things that you could do, basically obstructing flow, roundabouts, speed bumps, anything to sort of to slow traffic down. I think right now the fact that it's a state highway and it's treated like a state highway, people blow through there. One of the things that I've always worried about section at K and Lincoln, I was hopeful that we would have taken some more input when it was offered at the time to design something that was pedestrian friendly. I think it was rushed. Offered to get a state-funded grant of $10,000 to have someone come in and design a pedestrian-safe intersection there. It was brushed off by Alderman Zielinski, as far as I know. Rushed to get it developed for Terra. I think that's probably one of the most dangerous intersections on KK, and a gateway to the community. I think it would have been worthy of slowing down just a little bit. It's not the kind of construction we would do very often. We should have done it right. It would have saved lives. It would have looked a lot better for the community.
Alderman Zielinski.
First off, nothing was rushed at the intersection of Lincoln and KK. We had meetings with the businesses that were directly impacted in that area. And as a result, we bumped out the sidewalks in front of Cafe Lulu almost 20 feet so that they can have outdoor seating, and it's much more pedestrian friendly. It's because we had meetings and we solicited input from businesses that are directly impacted in that particular area. We also had follow-up meetings based on that original meeting with other businesses on KK, and we're going to be bumping out the sidewalks on KK in the springtime to make it more pedestrian friendly and more safer for traffic as well. In terms of talking about traffic calming measures to enhance the pedestrian safety, I've been active on a number of different fronts to do that. If you look on Potter Street, there's located on Potter Street. We did that. We also have 2 bump outs on 3rd Street between Holt and Safety in that area. So there's a number of done to enhance pedestrian safety. You have to get enforcement for the police to enforce by these cars. Everyone knows that these are speeding at very fast rate. Approach the police department about more enforcement. They say, Tony, we've got to catch criminals. So I've been working on a plan with the police department where we get additional police officers trained that wouldn't have been trained otherwise, and just have a certain number of additional police officers targeted for speed enforcement and other violations to enhance the traffic safety of the residents in our area.
Any rebuttal on that, Jan?
I've been at this, knocking on doors for about 8 months. I've talked to thousands of people in this neighborhood, and not a week goes by when I talk to concerned parents about speeding traffic on a number of thoroughfares in our district, and they're usually in areas where cars are going from one area to another, trying to get to one thoroughfare, and you could just slow that traffic down by a stop sign here or there. There aren't tons of these areas. Just a few stop signs would make a huge difference, and it's amazing. What I hear from residents is when they call Tony Zielinski and they say, hey, can we get a stop sign? The answer is, send me an email, or there's not enough money, or, what I heard last week was nobody stops at those things anyway. And I'm thinking to myself, come on.
Any final comment on this question?
You bet. Okay. First off, I got probably about 20 to 30 stop signs installed in my district since becoming alderman by residents who wanted stop signs installed in their districts. And the process that I use, I say, if you want to get a stop sign, we got to make sure that the neighborhood's on board. If the neighborhood is on board, then what we will do is we will introduce legislation over the traffic engineer's objections, because the traffic engineers do not like stop signs. Okay, so a number of times I've gone before the Public Safety Committee throughout the years to get stop signs posted over the objections of the traffic engineers, and I was successful. And it got so far to the point where the traffic engineers said, hey Tony, if you really want to get a stop sign installed, just let us know you feel strongly about it, because we're tired of going before this committee and getting hammered like this. And they said, but the only thing we ask is if we feel that there's a real safety hazard, that you take our advice on that matter. And I said, that sounds like a pretty fair deal. So there's been a number of signs that have been installed throughout the years. And one of the things people know about me is I'm very responsive to my constituents, and I take the time to get their input and move forward on their wishes.
Okay, our final question. Let's keep it civil out there. I don't mind a little passion, but let's be civil. Our final question in this section is, we'll start with Mr. Zielinski on this one. Dan Steininger of the business incubator BizStarts Milwaukee is promoting the need for investment in small and medium-sized new businesses to rev up Milwaukee's economic engine and create job opportunities. How can and should the city government leverage both federal and private investment dollars to provide the kind of investment Steininger suggests is necessary to enable young and talented but capital poor individual entrepreneurs to take a risk and launch the kind of enterprises that could beneficially transform Milwaukee into a thriving post-industrial city?
So Mr. Steininger wants a business incubator, or he wants help for small business, excuse me?
Let's see, the business incubator is promoting the need for investment in small and medium-sized new businesses. So he's, right.
Okay, well basically, depending upon what type of business that is needing help, there's an array of services in the toolbox that the city has to provide the resources to help that particular business. In my particular district, there's been a number of different businesses that either needed facade grants, they needed retail investment fund grants, they needed MEDC low interest loans, they needed a tax incremental finance district. If you look at the Hope Plaza development on 3rd and Holt, I was successful in getting a tax incremental finance district created that spurred the development of a number of jobs and a number of new businesses in that particular area. I also was successful in getting the Kinnick Gap Improvement District started, which has been very beneficial to helping the businesses in that particular area. So there's, depending upon what the situation calls for, there's a number of items that we can pull out in our toolbox to help those districts grow and prosper, which in our district they have. Our district is one of the fastest growing districts and one of the most vibrant business districts in the city of Milwaukee. We have 2 multi-million-dollar developments within a block of each other. I don't know of any part of the city that has 2 multi-million-dollar developments within the block of each other. So we're moving forward, and we've been very helpful to the businesses in our area, and that's one of the reasons why we're growing at the rapid rate that we are.
Okay, questions? Comments?
You know, I think I'll take the question a little bit more broadly, is what is it we do to help small businesses in Milwaukee? 85% of the businesses in Milwaukee have 25 employees or less. I would say one of the most important things that the city of Milwaukee could do is go back and start scrapping some of their ordinances that prohibit small business people from starting out. It's a maze of permitting and regulations I work with small business entrepreneurs every single day. It's a huge uphill battle, and what ends up happening, if they get the money they need, if they get the place they need to do business, and they put their back into it, the last thing they need is to run into City Hall. That's when they give up. They could use the cooperation of the local alderman to help them to paint a roadmap through the regulations at City Hall, and not have that local alderperson picking and choosing who succeeds. Right now, a system of aldermanic privilege in Milwaukee allows every sitting alderperson essentially total thumbs up or thumbs down on any single business in the city of Milwaukee. Combining that with the licensing and regulations and ordinances, that means that if you do everything right, you still have to curry favor with the local alderman. That's not good. Nothing happens in the 14th district. No business gets started unless Tony Zielinski says it's going to happen. And Zielinski doesn't say it's going to happen unless there's something in it for him. That's not good for small business.
Well, the first thing I want to start off by saying is my entire campaign has been based on a positive campaign. I have not mentioned my opponent in my Facebook, any literature, any press releases. My campaign is based on a positive campaign because I believe a campaign should be based on solutions and accomplishments, not on who can throw on that. And I do take exception to the fact that this latest dirt that's been thrown at me is nothing gets done in my district unless there's something in it for me. Anybody that knows me, including people that may not necessarily support me, know that my district comes first. And the only thing I care about is my district and doing the best thing for my district. And any decision that I make, it has the support. That's true. It is our district.
Our district.
Let's let the candidates speak here, please. Submit your question in writing, please. That will come. Okay, go ahead.
And going back to the original question, in our 14th district over here, there's been a number of profitable businesses in our area. We have one of the most thriving, up-and-coming districts in the entire city of Milwaukee. I try and help all businesses in my district. If you look at Sweetwater Organics, urban agriculture movement, this is a major paradigm shift. We have a real gem here with Sweetwater Organics. They're a strong support. I got $250,000 for them. They're creating all sorts of new jobs. And any business that I've talked with that has the support.
I'm going to ask the audience to please let the candidates speak. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Any business that has the support of my constituents, I support 110%. And any decision that I've made, I challenge anybody to go to the records at City Hall before any committee that doesn't show the support that the businesses have in my district that I've worked with.
Okay. Any final comment to that? Otherwise, we'll move on. We are ready for some questions from the audience. And so I'm going to ask my screeners if they have some questions. I have a few here. But if you'd like to bring those up now, that would be helpful. So speaking of this district, here's a question from the audience. In addition to your aldermanic obligations, how are you involved in this community? In other words, how are you connected to the 14th district? And we will start this time with Mr. Pierce.
You know, I live and breathe this district. I moved here 5 years ago, knew it was immediately that I wanted to spend the rest of my life here, bought a home, and immediately got networked into the community. I frequent all the local restaurants. I'm out at the park. I'm a member of the neighborhood association. I was a board member of the neighborhood association until I filed papers to get into this race. So I've had to step off the board. I've also assisted a number of small businesses and private individuals in the area in starting small businesses or just navigating through some of their legal problems. Much of the work that I've done as an attorney in the area has been at reduced fee or no fee. It's part of what you do to give back to the neighborhood. I think it's one of the things that amazes me about this neighborhood, and I think that the reason that Altera is coming here is they see that all the coolest people in the whole city are moving to Bayview. And so Altera wants to be where the action is. There's a lot happening, but there's a lot of artistic, entrepreneurial folks in the neighborhood, and they're investing in the neighborhood. What I do is, offer my time helping them get a leg up in the world.
Thank you. Mr. Zielinski.
Basically, my involvement is across the board. One of the things that I'm very involved with is getting a number of block watches started. If I go through an area and people have some issues about some recent activity in their neighborhood, I say, let's get a block watch started. and we send out notices to the immediate neighborhood. We coordinate with the police department, and there's an awful lot of block watch meetings. Also, door to door, I spend an awful lot of time knocking on doors on people, in the neighborhoods in my district. That's the way you truly get a handle on what's going on in that particular district. I can pretty much go to any street and I'll tell you what the issue is in that particular street. And I give my phone number, my home number is in the phone book. I give my cell phone number regularly to my constituents. They can contact me in the evenings, weekends, anytime. This is a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day job, and I'm accessible to my constituents at all times.
Thank you. I'm going to combine two questions here because they're somewhat related. And really, you've already discussed to some degree what you would like to see done in terms of economic development. And then one of the questions was, what is the alderman's role in promoting economic development? What are the boundaries? But there's also been the subject of privilege coming up. In order to get things done, you obviously have to work with others. So could you speak to what is the alderman's role more specifically? And is privilege a corrupt practice, or is that part of the job? And we'll start with, last time we had Jan, we'll start with Tony.
Well, I believe that the role of the alderman is multifaceted. I think that the alderman, first and foremost, has to make sure that his constituents know what's happening and solicit their input and feedback before any major or potentially controversial project moves forward. At the same time, I think it's important for the alderman to have some vision and some leadership and provide initiatives to help move things along. The most recent example is this public art project that I pushed forward about 8 months ago. People saw renderings of this in the Bayview Compass newspaper. The businesses on KK love this initiative. The Business Improvement District, in fact, voted unanimously to maintain this public art project at their own cost, on their own dime, so there's not 1 cent of taxpayer dollars used in the maintenance, because they believe it's going to help them. And I believe that's going to help promote business. I think people that are coming to Bayview and the people that are coming to Bayview appreciate art. And you enhance the quality of life with art and things like that, that's going to enhance the area. And so I think the alderman needs to have a vision. There's also a number of initiatives I've been involved with just beyond the grassroots day-to-day activities. For example, I introduced and passed some of the strong sweat-free legislation in the nation. The sweat-free movement is a movement where you don't buy products made in sweatshops. One of the reasons why our economy is in the dire straits that it is in is because of sweatshops. Many of the great paying jobs we had in this community went overseas where workers could be exploited for economic gain in sweatshops, and it's killing our economy. And I don't think that those companies should be rewarded for exploiting workers for economic gain. And because of my ordinance, if a sweatshop wants to bid on certain city contracts, they can't get the contract. That allows more American companies to get the contract, hire Americans, build it here, and keep the wealth here.
One of the reasons that I got into this race was just a realization that I'm neighbors with thousands of the most extraordinary people I've ever had the pleasure to call friends and neighbors. I believe the secret to realizing our potential as a district is, and what the alderman must be able to do, is to engage the people who live here. I know one thing for sure. Tony and Zielinski and I are not the smartest guys in this neighborhood, and a good leader will know how to reach out and get the best ideas from the folks who live here, whether they're urban planners, architects, pedestrian experts, bicycle experts, historical preservationists. I think the key is to get our diverse population working together. The alderman's job should be removing barriers, supporting people, connecting people together. With respect to aldermanic privilege, if you're not familiar with this, this is a custom in Milwaukee where each alderperson gets to do whatever they want and the other 14 folks fall in behind. That gives each alderman a lot of power. I think that means whether I'm the alderman or Tony Zielinski's the alderman, you should be looking over our shoulder all the time and make sure we're not getting a little carried away with that power.
that being solicit the input of business. I'll use the example of Cafe Lulu and the KK and Lincoln intersection. The original plans for that KK and Lincoln intersection did not call for Cafe Lulu sidewalk to be extended in the way that it was. But they came to the meeting and they said, we want that sidewalk extended so we can have outdoor seating. BYO Studio also came to us, and now we're working on plans to extend the sidewalk over there. So that's just one example of the way the neighborhood and businesses are engaged on anything that directly impacts them. And we took their input and their feedback. Very good suggestions, and I'm glad that we did, and our district is better for it.
Jan, final rebuttal to that? Otherwise, we'll move to Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, another question. We have seen revitalization with the Milwaukee and Menominee rivers and their surrounding valleys. These efforts put into each revitalization has had a profound and positive impact on the nearby communities. What is your vision for the future of the KK River and its corridor and the role it will play in our community? And how do you plan to accomplish this? Maybe it's time to start with Jan.
You know, I've spent a lot of time knocking on doors in this particular area. We're reclaiming a lot of land. There's a lot of potential for development in the area. I think my general philosophy is let's engage the business community. Let's engage neighborhood groups. Let's make sure we're using it for the best purposes of the surrounding citizenry. Let's make sure we're working together on this. I think we've got huge potential. The one thing that I don't want to see happen is huge tracts of land, being sold off to developers for condominiums just because they, come to you with bundled campaign contributions. And that's one of the things I think, frankly, causes problems with development in this city. Let's clean it up. Let's make the process transparent, and let's engage the community more actively in an honest way where we're really listening to the people who live there and the people who want to develop the land.
Tony.
Well, again, I just have to respond that, I don't take money, I don't take bribes, or any intimation like that is completely falsehood. And again, I have to waste our time on a campaign, responding to accusations like that when we should be talking about solutions. Now, going back to the question of the KK River and business enhancement, we have a Kinnickinnick Business Improvement District, Kinnickinnick River Business Improvement District, and the Horny Goat Brewing Company is one of the success stories on the KK River, where people are able to enjoy the river. We're able to enhance the quality of life of people in the area over here, and at the same time, if we want to, we also need to preserve the river as well. And I got an award from the KK River Keepers group for my efforts to help preserve the KK River. There's also been a number of other beautiful green space areas that developers wanted to build on. But I had meetings with my constituents, like north of D.D. Marini's. There is open space there. They wanted to put condos over there. I made sure my constituents were informed. They were opposed to condo development on that green space. And I was successful in blocking that so that we can retain that green space. So it's a combination of retaining green space and getting development. Thank you.
He's just in. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. You can.
I wasn't saying that you were taking bribes. I'm saying that campaign contributions have an impact on politicians' actions. And if they don't have an impact, they have an appearance of impropriety. Now, I would give, one example. Let's look at 3 developments in the district, 3 developments or potential developments. The Eco Bay Village, Hyde House, and the Dwell project, the current Conway and KK project. Do you know what all 3 of those developments or potential developments had in common? Affordable housing tax credits. Now, in the Eco Bay project, well, that's dead. Hyde House, almost dead. The reason it was almost killed off was because they were characterized as the next Cabrini Green, low-income housing slums. Miraculously, though, on KK, we have the Dwell project, same tax credit financing, and all of a sudden we recharacterize it as luxury condominiums. The only thing that's different, again, is, thousands of dollars of campaign contributions that came from all the parties in that transaction. It looks to me like there's a problem. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much. Every one of those projects had neighborhood meetings, and at every one of those meetings, the decision of the immediate neighborhood was supported by me. The people that supported, I had a community meeting, there was advertised well in advance in the Bayview Compass newspaper on the Dwell project, and the overwhelming majority of people at that meeting were supportive of that project. That's why I supported it. We also had a meeting on the Eco Bay Village, and the overwhelming majority of people were opposed to that project. This is all public record, and that's why I was opposed to that, and the same thing goes for the Hyde House. I'm being perfectly consistent. Any project that comes forward of any controversy whatsoever, there's a community meeting, and the wishes of the majority are followed, and it is my job to follow the wishes of my constituents, which I did in each and every one of those 3 cases.
So I want to tag on to the Dwell. There was a question about the 5-story Dwell Bayview building. Does it fit? People are worried about the type of development going on, and maybe you could respond to that. Tony, do you want to go ahead and sort of change the discussion a little bit here?
Okay.
But
Well, the
does
first
it
thing,
fit?
okay, thank you. Well, the first thing that matters is, do the constituents support it? There was a very open, very well advertised meeting beforehand, and the overwhelming majority of constituents supported that. Do I think it fits? Based on the input, yes. Some of the benefits of that are that we've got a lot of young, professional, talented people moving into the neighborhood. But a lot of these people do not want to own an older home. Me, myself, I own an older home. I like that. But a lot of these newer, younger people, they want a new, modern place to live on a business trip. We didn't have any option like that for them before. This is an option for those people that are young professionals that want to have a place to stay that fits what they're looking for. We're filling a void that we didn't have before. Another added benefit is the fact, to be quite frank, the buildings that were there before were in a dilapidated state. We're replacing those dilapidated buildings with a building that is much more aesthetically pleasing. Above and beyond that, another benefit of this project is that it's going to add to our tax base significantly. The amount of taxes that we were generating from those dilapidated small buildings was small in comparison to this $13 million development. The momentum, to continue the momentum of the development we have in our district. When I talk to prospective developers and I say, look, we've got 2 multi-million-dollar projects within a block of each other, they raise their eyebrows. Yes, Bayview is the hot place. This is one place we want to invest in. We want to join the bandwagon of everybody else coming to Bayview. You need projects like this moving forward to keep that momentum going forward. We're on a roll. We want to keep the roll going, and we need big projects to continue that momentum.
Jan, does it fit?
If momentum means tearing the rest of our historic downtown down, I'm not sure I like that momentum. I'd like to start taking care of the buildings that are there now. I don't think they build neighborhoods like this anymore. I think we could do a lot more, like, getting bed sheets out of the windows that have been there for 10 years, weeds that are hanging out. Why aren't the DNS guys, tagging some of these building owners on KK? Let's clean up the neighborhood we have. Let's get some park benches out there. Let's respect it. Let's walk it. Does the Dwell building fit? I don't think so. And with regard to the neighborhood supporting it, I find it interesting that the parcels on that block were being purchased over a period of 4 years prior to when they tore it down, secretly, to the extent that nobody was talking about it. And then just before they broke ground, they had a public meeting, and people were basically told, this is what's happening. I spent a lot of time in that neighborhood. I don't think anybody's for it. The idea of buying the buildings and then running them into the ground for 4 years and then calling them dilapidated and saying, oh, gee whiz, now we have to tear them down, that's not exactly the option that I would choose. I'd like to see a little bit more historic preservation, a little bit less tear down. If we're going to build something new, let's make it reference the past.
Go ahead.
I have to respond again. I never said that we need to tear down the rest of historic Bayview in itself. I believe in historic preservation. In fact, when the historic Beulah-Britton House was in the process of being purchased and the historical integrity of that building was going to be compromised, I interceded and helped save that building. And then when the Bayview Historical Society came forward, worked with them and supported their efforts to purchase that building. I've been very involved in preserving the historical character of our district. I think that is one of the strengths of our district, is that we do have that historical quaint ambiance, and we need to preserve that, and we need to carefully balance that with new developments. As far as DNS going after these places that aren't up to code, I constantly work with DNS to go after these places that are not up to code, that have whatever in the windows, and I'm very aggressive on that with respect to enforcing those codes.
Okay, we have a question for Tony this time, giving you the incumbent. Of course, a lot of them are coming up at you. Here's one for you. The 14th district is not only on KK, there are other streets. So why put up dollar store on Chase? Did anyone ask us? Question came in. Go ahead.
Number one, I didn't have anything to do. I didn't have any say. Contrary to what was mentioned earlier, that nothing goes up or goes down without the alderman's approval, the dollar store is a perfect example. Okay? There is nothing that the alderman has to do or say with respect to that dollar store going up or down, and the reason why there was no meeting on that, or whether the neighborhood supported that, is because I didn't have any control over the matter. That area was zoned for that type of business, and that business was allowed to go there, and it went in there. There was nothing I could do about it. If there was something I could have done about it, there would have been a community meeting, and we would have solicited input, and we would have moved forward with the wishes of the neighborhood.
Comments, Jan?
You know, I think the dollar store reminds me of the bong and sex toy store on KK. There's nothing that keeps them off KK either. What I'd like to see as a general philosophy in this district is promoting filling vacant storefronts by helping entrepreneurs. Let's get good businesses in there so we don't have to pander to the businesses we don't want. With respect to the district being larger than KK, I couldn't agree more. It's amazing the education you get. You know, some people might not know this, but the district goes out to 15th in Oklahoma. You know, if you live close to the lake and you call Tony Zielinski, he'll personally come over and change your light bulbs and fill your potholes. But you know what happens when you get out to 12th Street and you start talking to people, and I say, hey, I'm running for alderman, they say, well, hey, if you see that other guy, you know, we haven't seen him in 6 to 8 years, and just tell him, whatever his name is, that he should start answering his phone, and we're tired of hearing about Bayview. So as a general philosophy, I think the alderman should be serving all constituents, being in all areas of the district. I propose keeping office hours on KK, 13th Street, splitting my time equally, getting a bilingual assistant, making sure I'm available at times and places convenient to everybody, and let's give everybody the same kind of fabulous treatment, not just the elite lake crowd.
Okay,
Here we go again with a personal attack on me instead of focusing on the issues, okay? I treat all parts of my district the same. The Ohio Park Neighborhood Association, which is west of the area that was referred to earlier, I helped get that neighborhood association started, and I work very closely with that group, as I do with a number of other businesses in that part of my district as well. I don't, just because you live on South Shore Drive, change the light bulb and not return phone calls on 13th Street or 15th Street. I work very closely with people all over my district, and I have support from people all over my district. So I just have to respond to that. I just don't focus on KK. I focus on all parts of my district, and I'm responsive to all my constituents all throughout the district.
I'm hearing the audience want to hear the answer to this question. And it's really, I think, even on a broader scale than the last discussion, which is a good segue into this. What will you do to increase transparency in city government? And are there any departments specifically that you would work to, again, listen to that carefully. It's what would you do to increase transparency, so it's assumed in there that it could be better. And we'll go ahead and let Tony start, and then Jan can move out of that.
Okay, well, again, Any major project that moves forward in my district, there's a meeting, and people, if there's any controversy whatsoever, they have an opportunity for input and feedback. So if that's the best transparency we could have. If there's always open to new suggestions and new ideas, but you know, no matter what decision you make, there's always going to be some people who are disgruntled, even though they're in the minority and they feel that they should be able to get their version approved. But we have a system that's very transparent, and that's the system that I think has worked.
Okay. Jan, what would you do to increase transparency?
You know, just saying it's so doesn't mean it's so. I think that neighborhood involvement, citizen engagement, and active oversight on a regular basis is the most important thing we can do as citizens of this district and citizens of this country. This has been an extraordinary experience for me over the last 8 months. It's kind of a depressing time as a country to watch, you know, things sort of get out of control. I think this is the one level of government where we can actually affect the outcome of our lives. We can actually get our hands around the neck of government, make it do what we want it to do. I think the first step in that is giving people timely and accurate information. I'd like to see, instead of every 6 months, just a newsletter, let's see regular, weekly, maybe daily emails about legislation that's being enacted at the city level. Let's have invitations to every single meeting that's going on, descriptions of what the legislation means to us. Let's have active participation in meetings. One of the things that my opponent is very good at is giving the appearance of neighborhood involvement. But you know what? Tony knows exactly where he wants to go, and inviting just the right people to your meeting isn't the answer, okay?
That's totally false.
Getting the job done right means getting it done right. That means, doesn't matter what my opinion is, it means getting an honest input from the constituents in the neighborhood. I think that there are certain committees, liquor licensing committee in particular, that I'll tell you what, I think I'd make it assigned watching for every citizen in my district to watch those videos. It's a circus, and we ought to start right there, cleaning house, and you know.
Okay, Tony, chance to rebut.
Yeah, here we go again. Inviting just the right people to the meeting. Okay, if you have an article in the Bayview Compass newspaper, how is that inviting just the right people? So again, any accusation that is made against me, any negative attack that's made against me, I've got evidence, videotape, newspaper stories to counteract that. And I wish that we could have a campaign that just focus on the solutions of the problem instead of having to waste time to, you know, deal with these negative attacks. Let's have something positive, which is what the people of 14 districts want. They want a positive campaign based on solutions instead of negative attacks.
Okay,
Quit
campaigns can be
nitpicking.
rough, as we're experiencing right now, but this is our chance to air some of these attacks and these issues. Here's another tough question, which is relevant not just to you two running, but to all kinds of elections. But the question that came from the audience is, how can we get rid of, and we know it costs money to run, but how can we get rid of the, quote, appearance of corruption when campaign funds may influence your decision? And we'll start with Jan on that.
I think it's a good question. I think that you can't help but look at a candidate's campaign finance report and, you know, start connecting the dots. You know, you see how they act, you look who's giving that person money, it raises questions. You know, in this district, I don't know if people are aware, but the maximum that any person can contribute is $382. I was talking to a lawyer in my firm last year, and I said, why would anybody throw their vote for $382? And, you know, the answer was, and I just felt kind of foolish, well, it's not the $382, it's the bundled contributions that come together. It's the group of people that make it known we're contributing together. What I would like to see, frankly, public financing of campaigns. I'd like to see, if you're a member of, for instance, a particularly sensitive committee like liquor licensing, that you just do not take you don't take money from liquor licensees at all. I wrestled with it myself, whether I take liquor license money, potential licensee. I've taken a couple of contributions, I've thought about it, and I thought if I get elected, and I think I've got a pretty decent shot here, and I end up on that committee, you know, the first thing I'll do is make sure that I don't take liquor money. It taints your decisions, every single one of them.
Tony?
Well, I'll tell you right now, there's that cuts both ways. There's people that are liquor, you know, establishments, and so there's people that are kicking in money, you know, people throughout the years that have raised money against me because I didn't support them, even though the neighborhood was opposed. I've withstood all sorts of attacks by special interest groups because I stood with the neighborhood. Every issue that I've supported the neighborhood, I can point to with meetings, neighborhood meetings, whatever, and I've had businesses raise money against me in those campaigns. Okay? I'm in this business because I believe I know what we can do to solve the problems, and this is not just a job, it's a passion for me. You know, so, you know, I can't speak about other people, but I'll tell you, for me, it doesn't make any difference. There's people that have never given me any money that I've helped continuously, and there's people that have given me money that I voted against. Okay? Everybody knows my district comes first.
Our district.
Can I have a follow-up?
You may, sure.
When my opponent ran for lieutenant governor in 2010, he was able to raise over $100,000 in a few short months. That money, average about 90% of it came from out of this district, and the majority of it was from liquor licensees, gas station operators, and real estate developers. It's hard now not to say whose interests are you representing. And frankly, I think it ought to be about the neighborhood and not about a politician. It ought to be about being a public servant, and that means putting your constituents' needs first. That's always going to be put in question if you have that much money coming from out of the district from special interests.
We had another one on financial donations from the audience. Thank you for all these questions. That's similar in nature, and you may have already answered it, so go ahead and be brief. But both of you are accepting financial donations from outside the district, as you pointed out. That's the way it is. Where does the majority of your funding come from, and how do you, just tell the audience, how do you intend to represent the district when your campaign does receive funding from people who don't live or work in your district? How do you continue to, or how would you represent your constituents in this district? Given that, I'm sorry, we'll go with Tony first and then come back to Jan.
Well, as I stated earlier, and some of this is redundant, my constituents are the sole determinant of the decisions that I make with respect to my position as alderman of our district in the 14th over here. In every decision that I've made, as I mentioned earlier, you can look at the committee meetings, neighborhood meetings, and so forth. I went with the neighborhood, even if it meant that certain businesses were opposed to that decision, and they raised funds against me.
Okay, Jan?
You know, I have taken money from out of the district. Some of my family lives out of the district. I raised money from colleagues of mine, attorneys, who are just happy and excited to see some turnover, some possible turnover in the Common Council. I would make a distinction between friends, family, and colleagues and special interest money. There's nobody who's given me money that would even have the appearance of a quid pro quo or a potential quid pro quo transaction. But if you're taking thousands of dollars worth of money from developers who are tearing down historic neighborhoods, that starts to look a little funny. And I think those are the two ends of the spectrum. I'd like to keep it a little bit more family friendly.
Okay, another interesting scenario came from the audience. You have no choice but to cut $10 million out of the city budget. So what specific areas would you vote to cut? And where do you achieve savings? And let's see, I think it's time to start with Jan.
That's not fair. That's the toughest question.
Gotta cut. We're all cutting. We're all cutting the budget. So take a minute, think about
Let's
that.
start with the alderpersons.
Well, if you had to cut, knowing what you know now, what would you look at in terms of the city budget? I'm sure you've thought about, to some degree, what areas, because your constituents, I'm sure, are talking to you about that as well.
You know, I'll tell you, I think being an alderman means, or alderperson, means having to make tough decisions. I think a good example of a tough decision that's going to be coming over the next 5 or 10 years are going to be potential cuts in public safety services. You can see this one brewing. You can see it a mile away. You can see it with the brownouts of the fire stations. You know, that's a football just happening. You know, no alderperson wants to take the responsibility for closing a fire station in their district. I think with the majority of the city budget being police and fire, you have to almost look at those. Even if you don't look at them first, I think the majority of cuts are going to come in that area. What I've told the police officers and firefighters in this district that I've talked to is that when that time comes, I'll make decisions like that with their input, because I don't know what it's like to be a police officer or a fire person, you know, but I've told them that I'll make it with their input on an honest basis, even if it's potentially an adversarial role. I've had really thoughtful discussions with folks like that, and they agree. As long as the process is fair and it respects all the parties involved, we come to the table together, we'll figure out how to make those cuts together.
Tony?
Well, I think that we have to continually strive to improve the efficiency of the operation and delivery of the services for the residents for the city of Milwaukee. I think that there's always room for improvement, and we just have to continue along that track. And when the appropriate time comes, and we have to look at deeper cuts that are not perhaps sustained by inefficiencies, we have to look at that time and judge it at that time.
Okay, that was a tough question, obviously. Let's go to something that maybe is a little easier. How about this one? You have no choice. This audience is charging you to create employment opportunities for 10,000 people who are currently unemployed. So do you create these opportunities? And this time we'll start with Tony.
Create 10,000 jobs?
10,000 jobs for the whole city council. It looks like it's geared toward the whole city. But 10,000 people currently unemployed in Milwaukee's inner city. How do you create these opportunities?
Well, I helped start that path with Growing Power. I was successful in getting $400,000, in excess of $400,000 of community development, of economic development dollars for Growing Power, which is a Central City company founded by Will Allen and the urban agriculture movement. And they're going to be hiring 150 Central City residents for jobs. And I think that the urban agriculture movement is going to take off. With the advent of aquaponics and hydroponics, much less soil, much less water is required to grow these agricultural products. And as a result, I believe it's financially feasible to create significant amount of urban agriculture jobs, where historically that was not the case. And I think with companies like Will Allen and Growing Power and Sweetwater Organics and other companies like that, we have a tremendous potential to create jobs where historically that was not the case. And even better yet, not only are we creating jobs where historically we were not able to create jobs, we're helping the environment, because the average truckload of agricultural products travels 1,400 miles. Each truckload that we can eliminate by growing that food within our city limits, we're helping to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases from each and every one of those trucks. And Milwaukee is a national leader in the urban agriculture movement. We got people coming in from San Francisco, LA, New York, looking at what we're doing here, mirroring that model. And I think that we can continue to increase the amount of jobs significantly so that we can provide those jobs in something that's meaningful and very eco-friendly And helping also, another benefit is to reduce our reliance on the importation of foreign fossil fuels. We want to reduce our reliance. If major cities like Milwaukee, Chicago, New York, LA can grow more and more of their own agricultural products, that's less oil we're going to have to import. So it's a win-win situation all across the board.
The question you posed might be the most important question facing the city of Milwaukee. Where are the jobs going to come from? Globalization is here to stay. Low-skilled manufacturing is gone. If it's coming back, it's going to come back in a very small way. The answer to jobs in the future of Milwaukee's economy is creating the kind of city that smart people want to move to, and also creating and crafting smart people here already. I think that means investing in education and being ready to do the next big thing. What's the next big thing? I don't know what it is, but it's going to take really smart people. And it's going to be high tech and high tech manufacturing. In the wake of those industries are going to be other support types of jobs that are going to benefit low-skilled workers. You know, it falls. The nice thing about manufacturing is the benefits fall right down the line. But I think this is a long-term solution. It's not one government program. It's not a quick fix. It's a dedication and a commitment to teaching, to taking our students and making them college-ready, 21st century ready.
And another very important issue to this audience, and I just got a second question in right along the same lines, is education. So we'll wrap up this portion with this last question on education, which is near and dear to everybody's hearts, and it's great that we're in an educational forum here. But here's the question. What is your plan or vision for promoting quality schools in Bayview? That's one portion of it. And the second one had to do with, the question is, what can you do about Bayview High School, this high school becoming a school for Bayview students again, rather than 80% coming from out of the area? So there are two questions. If you want to answer them separate, you can, but that's what we want to know. And we'll start with, I think I had Tony go first last time, so we'll have Jan go.
Again, I've been at this 8 months, knocking on doors, average 8,000 doors. I just one month into this, and the biggest surprise to me was how important Bayview High School is to this community. I knew it was important, but I had no idea of the impact that it's having and the potential it has in the future. It is, I believe, the single most important issue to this community. Parents are leaving this community because their kids are reaching high school age, and their choice is either stay here and not be able to send their kids to school, or to leave. I've talked to parents who know other parents who said, my friends aren't moving here because of Bayview High School. I think it's the single most important thing we could do to turn around this community. I think what the alderperson has to do is support the smart, thoughtful parents who are already working towards that goal. I was privileged to be involved in meetings all through last summer and fall. Parents for Bayview Schools, they brought school board members here. The superintendent came here. He acknowledged, I am missing market share. So, you know, it's now gone to closed committee. I think we've got to keep the pressure on MPS, and I think the alderman working thoughtfully with the local school board director would be a huge help.
Well, as alderman of our 14th district, I've been working with MPS and specifically Bayview High School. In fact, just last week I organized a meeting with the Bayview High School principal, the captain of the 6th District Police Station, 2 frontline officers, TABS representatives, and a number of other representatives to work forward to come with a specific concrete action plan to improve Bayview High School. In fact, I'll tell you right now, what we have to do if we're going to turn that school around is we have to create an environment that's conducive to learning. We have to empower the teachers to take control of the classrooms. The teachers systemically do not have the authority to take control of their classrooms. And I feel if a kid is habitually disruptive in the classroom, rather than playing games with him or waiting till he attacks somebody and then sending him to another high school, and then Bayview gets the kids who were kicked out from the other high school, instead of playing these revolving chairs, what we need to do is use Bayview High School on a pilot program basis, take the habitually disruptive students, put them in a separate alternative school where they can get the kind of help they need. More often than not, these kids come from dysfunctional families, and their behavioral problems are rooted in their home life. And what we have to do is provide wraparound services with family preservation support specialists and other experts to work intensively with those kids and their families to get at the root problems behind these behavioral issues. Because if we just continue to treat the symptoms of the problems, we're never going to be successful. We have to have an environment that's conducive to learning. And if parents in Bayview knew that if they sent their kid to Bayview High School and disorderly conduct was something that was not going to be tolerated and the teachers can focus on teaching, they're going to start sending their kids to Bayview. And Bayview High School, once again, is going to be an excellent high school. But we've got to get order in the classrooms, and we've got to empower the teachers to do that. And we've got to get help for those kids that need the services that they're not getting it. They're not getting the help that they need in that environment now. We need to get them that help in a special environment.
That's fine. I was just going to say I didn't have to cut one of you off, but we're out of time right now, so I have to conclude this portion. The Common Council, this concludes the Common Council District 14 candidates debate. Thank you to our candidates. Thank you to our audience.